Before we dive in today, just zoom out for a second. AI obviously is transforming the world that we live in. It's reshaping how we work, how we communicate, how we access information, how we do almost everything. And I'm going to say right out of the gate, I have zero AI expertise. Like a lot of people, I'm kind of on the sidelines trying to figure out how to use it. Trying to figure out how to make it work for me and keep up with it. But even from my place on the outside of this, it's very clear that we're in a moment of like really accelerated change. Um, the pace right now feels faster than what we've seen before, faster than even 2 or 3 months ago. And huge transformations, I think, are coming, especially in sectors like agriculture. It's going to be bigger than we thought. And so it feels like really the right time to have this conversation and to come together and think about what AI means for smallholder farmers and what meaningful farmer-centered innovation is really going to look like. So that's why we're here today. A little bit about me before we get started. I lead agriculture here at 60 Decibels. I've been with the organization for about 3.5 years. And before that, I worked in agricultural development for a long time, both on the research and evaluation side and on the program implementation side. We've seen a ton of different models of agricultural extension, different advisory tools, different approaches to supporting smallholder farmers, different digital tools. And some work and some don't, and some are transformational, especially if they're designed around real farmer needs. So I'm really excited to talk about this today. Danu, can you just click to the next slide really quickly? Because I think there's probably some folks on the call that don't know who 60 Decibels is. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction of who we are and why we're here. 60 Decibels is a social impact measurement company. Our name, 60 Decibels, is the volume of human conversation. This is because we believe that to measure impact, you have to listen to the people on whom you're trying to have that impact. To do this, we conduct short, typically 15-minute phone conversations with end users, so often smallholder farmers in the Global South who are using a specific product, service, or solution. We analyze what they tell us, and we turn that feedback into clear, actionable insights in just a couple of months. And we call this approach lean data because it's designed to be light touch, designed to be fast, farmer-centered, and really built to be decision useful. And the goal is simple: to capture voices in a structured way, to capture farmer voices in a structured way, and translate those voices into insights that improve products, strengthen programs, and increase impact. In doing this, we have spoken to almost 200,000 individual farmers and value chain actors that have engaged with over 200 different local agricultural enterprises or organizations. All this data, these 200,000 voices, are available in Signal, which is 60 Decibels' impact intelligence platform, where it powers our impact performance benchmarks and it helps investors allocate capital to the most impactful solutions. That's enough about us, but just wanted to give you a little explanation of why we are here. You can go to the next slide. I'll quickly walk you through what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to hear directly from Tatiana Zelenska, who is the head of monitoring and evaluation at Digital Green. She is going to introduce Farmer Chat, explain how the AI chatbot works, how farmers use it, and what makes it innovative. And then I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Hanadi Al-Sayedi, who's a manager here at 60 Decibels. She's led all of our digital agriculture work. She's done so many digital agriculture studies, and she led this study that we did with Digital Green. So together, we're going to share the key findings from that study and focus on what the farmers told us about the solution. And at the end, we're going to open it up for a panel-style Q&A discussion. Before we get started, just a quick housekeeping note. I know that there's already like some chatter about this, but just to let you know everything that's happening here. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's two boxes. There's the chat box and the Q&A box. So in the chat box, please, as you've already been doing, introduce yourselves, tell us where you're calling in from, what organization you're with. In the Q&A box, that's where we want you to put the questions for the panelists. So if you have something that you want me or Tatiana or Hanadi to address, please put it in the Q&A box, and that's where we'll feed it. I think as Nadia already shared, we're recording the session. The session is going to be posted online and emailed to all of you after. And if you'd like to connect with us after the call, Nadia will drop in contact information into the chat box. Okay, amazing. Now, before we move forward, we're going to have some quick audience participation here to get a sense of who we're talking to and how much everyone's using AI. So There should be a poll popping up. Please answer these questions. How much do you use AI in your daily life? And how trustworthy do you think AI is? I'll give you a second, but as with all of 60 Decibels questions, it should be very quick and easy to answer. Hmm. Okay. Not surprisingly, we've got some big AI users. Just one person has never used AI, which makes sense given the selection into the webinar. And a big somewhat trustworthy. I think that is probably how I would have responded as well. Okay. Amazing. Thanks for your participation, guys. Appreciate it. Without any further delay from me or any more housekeeping, I'm going to get to the part that I know everyone came here to see, which is to learn about Farmer Chat. So I'm going to hand it over to Tatiana to introduce us to the solution, tell us all about it.
Thank you so much, Ellie. I'm really excited to be here. As you already mentioned, my name is Tatiana Zelenska. I'm the head of monitor and evaluation at learning at Digital Green. Have been with Digital Green for nearly 5 years. Very, very excited to be here. So let me start off by saying that Digital Green has been working at the intersection of agriculture and technology for almost 20 years, serving millions of smallholder farmers. When we started out, we introduced video-based extension model in the farming communities that had limited access to traditional advisory or traditional extension. And we worked very closely with extension agents on the ground and trained them to produce short videos that demonstrated best agricultural practices. And these videos featured local farmers, often women farmers, and they were a big hit. So they were very successful in encouraging adoption of best practices, but also what we've learned over the years is that videos were not delivering specific customized enough information that was relevant for a specific farmer. And we, a few years ago with, AI technology, we realized that we can leverage this new technology to not just serve farmers better, but we can actually transform the entire system. So this is how Farmer Chat was born. It's an AI-powered application that is free for farmers to use, and it offers an instant advice in local language, and farmers can type their question, they can record a question with a voice, or they can take a photo and receive instantly a response that can be in text or in voice. And I think importantly, this advice is not generic and not top-down advice that was promoted in videos, but gives the agency back to the farmer because they can ask the question that really matters to them. As you can see here on the slide, we have some statistics. So it's really taken off. We're very excited to see that now we have, after a couple years of developing Farmer Chat, we have about 1 million users who've asked 8 million questions in 16 local languages across many countries. Our top countries are core geographies where Digital Green works is India, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Nigeria. Next slide, please. But I think what makes Farmer Chat unique is that it's customized and it speaks the language of the farmer. So it can understand local dialect and agricultural terms that farmers use. It can also be personalized based on farmer profile information and usage. It also allows us to add dynamic information like weather forecasting, for example, and eventually some market-related information. And it can also be enriched with some deterministic models. So, for example, we have information on soil quality, and that can provide some informed advice on site-specific fertilizer recommendation, for example. So it has kind of endless potential possibility to really customize advisory and serve the needs of the farmers. One of my favorite quotes from recent fieldwork is a farmer saying, "Now I have extension agent in my pocket." So that's just a brief introduction about FarmerChat.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Before we go on, we are going to do a Q&A later, but I just want to ask you a couple of follow-up questions that I'm sure the audience is really curious about. Um, what have been some of the practical challenges in creating and iterating this solution? You mentioned that it understands local dialects, which I think is so impressive, but how have you been able to accomplish this and make it so useful for everyone in these like super local specialized contexts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, of course, the first challenge we ran into is that these large language models that we're familiar with are not trained on like local context, right? That's relevant for like a Kenyan farmer. And they're often trained on internet information text that skews right towards more higher income countries, towards maybe commercial farming or generic agronomic advice, right? So the challenge was that initially that technically advice is correct, but it's not relevant or feasible for the farmer in the countries where we work with, or that recommendation assumes that there is access to inputs or irrigation or markets, right? And of course, there was a gap in like understanding local language nuance. So we had to implement and build essentially a structured evaluation and what's called a reinforcement pipeline involving feedback, review from local experts, local agronomists, as well as farmer feedback to fine-tune the model. And it's fine-tuned for local relevancy, safety, specificity, and of course, it's a continuous process. So it's continuously being improved, like as we speak.
And I feel like this is always everyone's first question with farmer tools. So just can you clarify, is it smartphone only, or is there any way for farmers who don't have a smartphone to be able to access it? Oh, here we go.
No, it
Someone asked the
it
same
is
question.
smartphone only for now. It is true. So, but what we are seeing a lot is that, first of all, extension agents. We're very excited about using FarmerChat, and so farmers that don't have access to a smartphone, for example, they're still being reached by extension agents using FarmerChat. That's actually initially how we started out, right? There's a lot of sharing of phones in the households. So even if someone doesn't have like own smartphone, right, they can access a phone from another family member, and there is this kind of sharing that happens. And another thing that I guess we'll talk about later is that also farmers that have smartphones share information with their peers that don't have smartphones. So there is a lot of sharing of advisory from FarmerChat with others. And yeah, I think important thing to mention when we started out building on all these years of experience working with communities with video work is that we're not kind of building for farmers, but really building with farmers to make sure that we're capturing kind of real world phrasing and local language and collecting that data and feeding it back into the model to continuously improve it. So that loop is very important to kind of avoid abstraction or make the tool seem kind of irrelevant.
That's awesome. This is so cool. We barely scratched the surface, but we're gonna get into it more. Farmers Chat it's so exciting. When we think about AI more broadly, and like when I think about it in my life, it's one big question always kind of comes up, right? Um, it's adoption. It's one thing to build a really impressive AI tool, and it's another thing entirely for people to actually use it. And we all know this, like from our own lives. When you try a new AI tool, like you might experiment with it at first and like see what it can do and get curious and maybe like see if you can make it do weird things. But do you really integrate it into your workflow? Do you trust it? Do you act on the recommendations? And those questions are like so much more important when they are about a farmer's adoption of practices that affect their yields, their income, and their well-being. So in this next section, we're going to pivot and talk about the findings, the farmer voices about this from a study that we recently conducted with farmers who had been using Farmer Chat. We wanted to understand, are they adopting it? How are they using it? Do they trust it? And does it affect their farming decisions? So before we jump in, we're going to get you guys involved one more time and ask you to make a couple predictions. Poll, here we go. Yes. Do you think farmers are going to trust advice based on artificial intelligence? And do you think farmers can remember what they asked a chatbot? All right. Maybe. Yes. Okay. Good predictions. We will see. We'll see now if you're right. All right, cool. If you want to go to the next slide, just to give you a brief overview. We conducted the study in Kenya. The study was supported by the GitLab Foundation, who are here with us today. So thank you for joining and making it all possible. We spoke to 450 farmers that had recently used the Farmer Chat solution. We randomly selected these from a bigger database of farmers that have been using it, I think, in the last 3 months. And you can kind of just see a snapshot of who these people were. 28% were female. The average age is 37, so maybe a little younger than your typical farmer. And then the rest of the profile you can kind of see looks like Kenyan smallholder. You've got an acre of land and a mix of crops and livestock. One thing I want to point out is that we found half the sample had a post-secondary education, which potentially points to maybe a higher level of education than your average farmer using this digital solution, which I don't think is super surprising, but we'll ask Tatiana a little bit more about at the end when we get to the Q&A. We're not going to dig into every single result in the report, but it is online. I think a lot of you have seen it already. I'm going to go through a couple of the findings from the study that stood out to us, and then I'm going to hand it over to Hanadi to get into the deeper, most exciting insights at the end. So on the next slide, the first thing we ask farmers is this filling a gap? Could you find a good alternative to this solution? And we didn't define the alternative as being like an AI tool. It's up to them to interpret what a good alternative would be. And we had 87% of farmers saying no, they couldn't find a good alternative. It's a very strong signal that Farmer Chat's meeting a need that's not fulfilled elsewhere. Among the 60 who said that they could find an alternative, the 60 that said that they could find an alternative solution, they all said that Farmer Chat was better, or 92% said that Farmer Chat was better. One interesting point here that's not on the slide is that male farmers are more likely to say that they have access to an alternative solution. It's a small, we're within that small set that has access to alternatives, but males are more likely, and this could be because they're more likely to have access to a smartphone, or they're just generally better connected and have access to more services in general. So we know they like it. So this next slide is not going to be super surprising. But Farmer Chat has a Net Promoter Score of 63. If you're not familiar with the Net Promoter Score, it is a pretty common gauge of satisfaction and loyalty. Basically, how likely are they to recommend the solution? One interesting finding here is that among females, the NPS is actually higher. So you segment this result and look at just women, the NPS is 75 versus 57 for men. So this could be because, we also saw that they're more likely to trust the solution. They're more likely to say that they have all of their needs met. So that's an interesting finding. And then we ask an open-ended follow-up question after this question every time to understand, okay, you're satisfied with it, but why? And for the most part, people who are promoters likely to recommend with a 9 or 10 on this question are saying that they love the detailed advisory that they're getting. They love that it's quick responses, and they like the accurate weather updates. The detractors, remember, it's only 4% of people are detractors here, but the things that they mention are that they want more training, they want it to be more localized. And then similarly, we asked farmers if they've reported challenges, and 10% had. Most of the challenges that are reported are like technical issues, issues with image recognition, unclear recommendations. This is not a bad thing. As you can see, there's a benchmark here. This is still in the top 20% of the 60 decibels agriculture benchmark. And it's super important for tools like this to be asking their users, what are the challenges that you're experiencing so that you can resolve those challenges. Um, We'll go to the next slide to just see a little bit more about what's driving the satisfaction here. We asked about completeness. We have 94% of farmers saying that the answer was complete, 82% saying that the recommendations are very trustworthy. On ease of understanding, we have 2/3 saying that the information they received, all of it was easy to understand. So for people who said that there was some information that wasn't easy to understand, it was usually because the language was too difficult. And we found this particularly among older farmers. They're more likely to say, and I think that that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, as Tatiana was already describing, like getting the language right is like the hugely important thing for these populations. We also heard when we asked about like how would you recommend that they improve, that Farmer Chat improve, farmers were saying simplify the language. So that's sort of a key lesson here. We can go to the next slide. We talked about trust a little bit already, and Tatiana already talked about how information sharing is happening, but I loved some of these insights, so I really want to underscore this point. We asked, we already talked, we know they trust Farmer Chat, but we asked farmers in generally, like, what are their most trusted sources of information? And I think every study that's ever been done on agricultural extension will tell you that farmers are more likely to adopt a practice if it's coming from a source that they trust. And so we ask them broadly, like, what sources do you trust the most? And the top one here is, of course, friends, family, or community members. So farmers that they know, that they feel a connection to, they're most likely to trust. I think it's really interesting that the second one is social media. I would love to do a deep dive on that and understand what the sources of social media are. I think it's worthy of another study, but it's not the study for today. The point here is that farmers trust each other. And the coolest thing is that 79% of the farmers we spoke to said that they had shared their recommendation with another farmer. We asked how many people they had shared it with, and the median was 5 men and 4 women, but we had 35% who said that they shared it with more than 10 people. So the potential, Tatiana said over 1 million users are using this right now. And if you think that all of them are sharing it with other people, it's really just like a huge, powerful transformation potential here. So at this point, things are looking super powerful. Farmers like Farmer Chat, they trust it, they say it's filling a gap, they're sharing advice with other people. This is all super encouraging, but we still have the critical question. None of this matters if they're not changing what they're doing on their farms, right? At the end of the day, the information alone is not going to change their lives. It's if they apply it, if they apply it correctly, are they doing something new as a result? That's really the test here. So to answer that critically important question, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Hanadi, who's going to walk us through what we learned.
Great. Thanks so much, Ellie, for the insights. I'm really excited to share this next part of the study because we took kind of an interesting experimental approach here. So like Ellie said, she showed us that farmers clearly trust Farmer Chat and are satisfied with using it. But the next step for us was to understand what are they actually doing with the information that they receive. And so to dig deeper into the relationship between farmer behavior and the information provided, we introduced kind of an experimental behavior change module into our survey. So this module allowed us to assess the alignment between Digital Green's backend data, which showed kind of the queries that farmers asked Farmer Chat and the knowledge and actions that farmers reported taking on the ground. So if you go to the next slide, our first step was fairly straightforward. So we asked farmers directly whether they were applying the information they received from Farmer Chat. We saw that about 70% said that they had. And for those who hadn't, we followed up to understand why, what were the barriers to applying the information. Many farmers explained that, they plan to apply the advice in the future. It's just kind of, they haven't had the time yet. And then others cited barriers that we often see across the sector, such as financial constraints or lack of access to materials, but those were much smaller. But this left us with a key question. So when farmers say that they're applying the information, what does that actually mean in practice? What does that application look like on the ground? And this is where it became especially valuable for us to be working with Digital Green. They have access to kind of this really rich backend data showing us exactly what questions farmers asked the chatbot and the recommendations they received. And Tatiana and the rest of the team were like deeply engaged and excited about this research throughout the whole process, which made all of this possible. So if you go to the next slide, yeah, this is perfect. So for each of the farmers that we interviewed, we asked Digital Green to share the last 3 queries that the farmer had submitted, along with the response that the chatbot gave. So during the interview, we then asked farmers whether they remembered any of those questions, recent questions that they asked, and if so, what actions or decisions they took based on the recommendation. So farmers could either say that they took no action, they haven't done anything yet, or they don't plan to do anything with it, or they described what they did. Their response was completely open-ended, and importantly, the enumerators that conducted the interviews did not know what the chatbot had recommended. So there was no prompting or bias in how farmers responded. They only had access to the query that the farmers asked, but not the chatbot's response. So if you go to the next slide, we combined kind of farmers' self-reported actions with Digital Green's backend, and we found that most of the farmers that we spoke to recognized at least one of the recent queries that they asked, and about 2/3 reported taking some kind of action as a result. We did differentiate between kind of full matches where a farmer followed the chatbot's recommendations exactly, and then a partial match where they applied only part of the advice. To do this, we had a team that spent many hours kind of analyzing the qualitative overlap between the chatbot's recommendations and then the farmer's open-ended responses. And so just to show you kind of the exciting part of this work, if you go to the next slide, these are a few examples, so I can show you what I mean here. In the first case, you can see that the farmer asked about proper moisture levels for drying grain crops. Farmer Chat advised using a moisture meter and spacing the grain out for drying. And then you can see the farmer's response in doing exactly that. So I took the action based on the answer they gave me. They told me to dry the produce, which I did. I was also told to measure the content of moisture, so I measured using the gadget. So you can see that the farmer, again, like there was no prompting here from the enumerator. The enumerator didn't know that the recommendation was from Farmer Chat, but you can see that the farmer did follow the recommendation. In the next example, you can see that the farmer asked about natural remedies for ear issues in their cattle. Farmer Chat recommended using garlic and aloe vera and consulting a local expert. And you can see again that the farmer did what the chat told them to. So they said that they were given multiple options. The first was to wash the cow, and then the second was to mix the garlic with a certain oil, which they couldn't remember the name of, but they did. And after that, they brought them to a veterinarian, and they saw that the cow got better. There's lots more options, I think, in the report as well, if you want to dig into those. So I can, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, we introduced another example here on like yellow spots on ripe coffee. The farmer chat recommended applying kind of a balanced fertilizer, and the farmer reported purchasing that and doing it, and they saw the impacts of it. So across all these examples, you can clearly see the alignment between Farmer Chat's recommendations and the farmer's actions on the ground. So all of this was a very exciting outcome for everyone involved, and the team just loved the process of mapping out the farmer data to the query responses. If you go to the next slide. So to close, we kind of asked farmers about the overall impact of Farmer Chat on their farming season. The majority reported experiencing a much better season as a result of using the tool, which really kind of just highlights what both Ellie and Tatiana were talking about, kind of the potential of AI-enabled advisory tools to provide farmers with convenient and timely access to information. And you can just see the quote on the side from a farmer saying that they can get information kind of day or night without needing to go to an extension agent. And yeah, this just kind of showcases the amazing work that the Digital Green team are doing. And with that, I'll hand back to Ellie.
Awesome. This is perfect because we have like the most active Q&A box ever, and we've reserved 30 minutes of time for it, and we have not gone over. So we're going to jump into the Q&A session. I'm going to do my best to get all your questions answered, guys. Benu, if you want to take the slides down, and we can just put up our faces. Awesome. Okay. Tatiana, there's a lot of questions around the business model and how you're scaling and what those partnerships look like. So could you sort of give us a sense of, I guess, how it is supported financially right now, if there's a vision for this in the future, and then how you're partnering with different organizations to reach the farmers in different locations.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, um, first, I guess I would say that Farmer Chat is free for farmers to use. We don't believe that, charging for a query or a subscription-based model would be aligned with our mission. And currently, we're exploring several potential sustainability models. So first, I think public extension system. So governments and local NGOs often are resource constrained in the countries where we work in, and this solution is very cost effective. So you can reach farmers cheaper, but also with higher quality advisory. And so we are exploring whether embedding Farmer Chat into existing extension systems would be one way to scale. And then in that case, government partners would be potentially covering cost of deployment, localization. There's a lot of costs that go into that, or integrating Farmer Chat into their system. So that's one solution. Another one, we've had some really good success so far with some telco companies. So in several markets, we were able to negotiate 0 rating for the app. That means that farmers can use it, but are not using their data. And that was very successful. And we've seen significant increase in engagement after that. So a third potential avenue is agribusinesses or consumer packaged goods companies that are feeling maybe more pressure to source more sustainably, and so for them, offering Farmer Chat to the farmers they're sourcing from to make sure that they're getting advisory that's maybe climate smart, regenerative. That's a good business kind of for them, and makes kind of investment sense, right? But also would support farmers. So those are just some ideas, yeah.
If that makes sense. Just a reminder to everyone, I see there's an active Q&A happening in the chat, which is awesome. I'm working through the Q&A from the Q&A box, but some of Tatiana's colleagues are responding in the chat. So
thank you.
Totally happy for both of those things to happen. But just so you know, if you really want her to answer a question, please put it in the Q&A box, and I'm going to do my best. But there's kind of a series and a conversation going on around low connectivity, high costs of data, high costs of smartphones, the sort of whole suite of digital access challenges. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Definitely. So, I mean, you've already mentioned or asked about smartphone. Yeah, that's smartphone penetration, I think, is important. It is increasing. So one of the surprises for us recently was what happened in Ethiopia. So we assumed, kind of going into Ethiopia, we assumed that we will introduce Farmer Chat to extension agents, so development agents there, and we'll see how it goes. And we were very surprised to see the number of farmer users actually growing really rapidly in Ethiopia, even though, compared to maybe India or other markets, connectivity is not so great in Ethiopia, and even smartphone ownership, but we're seeing this positive trend. So that's definitely encouraging for us. And yeah, like I mentioned, sharing of phones in the community, in farmer groups, through even family members. That's also something that we are planning to document more, but we are definitely seeing that as well.
Awesome. And then there's a lot of questions around where Farmer Chat is active. Is there a list of countries or locations that people can reference somewhere to find out if it is available in their area?
It should be available currently pretty much anywhere. The quality of the language, that would be the limiting factor. So you can go to an app store. I should have somewhere a code to allow access to Farmer Chat. I don't know if I included that in the slide somewhere. but you can go into App Store and download it for free and try it out. But I think the limiting factor could be language, local language. So currently, like I mentioned, we have 16 local languages, of course, English, but it will depend. So, for example, it would work much better, like in Hindi, for example, than in some other maybe more local language. So that's the limiting factor.
Okay, that makes sense. And then a technical question that a few people have asked is, what is the source of the weather data and how accurate is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're currently partnering with Tomorrow Now. You know them, yeah. So and getting weather information through API keys. But yeah, there's definitely some room for improving accuracy. That's a bit tricky. So we're looking at some maybe other options as well, constantly, evaluating accuracy. I think what another interesting thing we learn is that farmers don't just want weather, they want like actionable weather. So how does this connect to current, agricultural season, and what action can I take based on the weather? So that was an interesting learning for us, yeah.
And then we just have a question about how you how you make it context relevant. Are the responses based on like the GPS location of the query, or do farmers describe where they are?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways, and it's like not so simple. So yes, farmers can share location. They can choose to share their location for greater accuracy, but if they don't choose to share location, the advice will be a little bit more generic based on kind of what we can capture generally where they are when they install the app. But if they share the location, then that's even more accurate, right? In addition, they can share by asking questions, they're essentially sharing additional data with us, right? So the type of crops they're asking about, the type of questions they're asking about, that's also used to customize content and, for example, follow-up questions that the chatbot is offering that will be based on the history of interaction. So the more farmer engages with farmer chat, the kind of the better the interaction is, that leads to higher engagement. So it's continuous process, and it's not just one data point that we use to improve customization. I also mentioned earlier some deterministic models like information about, for example, soil type and site-specific fertilizer recommendation that can be also delivered through like a push notification or a message to a specific farmer.
We have a question here that is asking if you tell the farmers how frequently their question has been asked. And I'm going to build on that question and ask sort of, are you using the data proactively to identify issues in particular agricultural areas? So for example, if there's a high frequency of farmers in a particular pocket asking about a particular pest or disease or problem, where does that information go?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's more of a future vision, how we can use this really rich and cool data asset that essentially farmers are telling us what they're worried about and what's important to them, and how then we can leverage that to fill in the gaps in content, for example, or introduce a system to prevent some of the outbreaks of disease, for example. That's like less reactive but more proactive. But that's kind of where our future work, future vision is. In addition, it doesn't even have to sit with Farmer Chat. I mean, with Digital Green, right? So that kind of aggregated data can be securely shared. So without sharing any personal information, can be shared with local agronomists and institutions that work on advisory, and they can also develop services, content that responds to farmer needs. And so that's the vision to kind of support ecosystem with data that otherwise, is just unknown and unseen.
Okay, I'm going to ask you two questions together about extension workers. So one is, what are the incentives for an extension worker to use the chatbot? And then second is, you had mentioned that one farmer said that they have an extension worker in their pocket. Does that mean, and do you see the sort of like replacement of the need for an in-person extension worker with the app?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first of all, we're not kind of trying to replace extension systems, but embed FarmerChat into existing formal and informal extension systems. There's no incentive for extension agent to use FarmerChat besides their personal kind of motivation. And we have done also surveys of extension agents using FarmerChat, also with 60dB earlier, and we did hear some really positive, encouraging feedback. So FarmerChat is helping to lower burden and workload for extension agents, because usually they have so many farmers to serve and like limited resources. So it's helping them to serve more farmers. It saves time for extension agents. So often they say, I don't need to now double check with my supervisor or to look for an answer in the manual that may be outdated. So it is helping extension agents to perform better. And another thing we hear consistently is that they feel more confident as extension agents, because they're able to answer broader like range of questions. And like, for example, in Ethiopia, training of extension agents is very specific to like either crop or natural resource management or livestock. And now we hear that extension agents can answer questions about something they weren't particularly like trained on. So it's expanding their expertise as well and their knowledge. And what was the second part of the question? So that was about extension agents. If it's replacing. No, it's not replacing. Again, I think it's really important to recognize that trust is actually built through some of the experience that extension workers have with FarmerChat. Farmers do still verify information that they receive from FarmerChat with their peers, with extension workers. And I think that's important when the information from this AI tool and from like a trusted human, they overlap and match. That really helps to build confidence. But we are very much embedding it into kind of existing social system. As you know, advisory is very much kind of a communal process, and even adoption often depends on farmers deciding together to try something or learning from a neighbor, right? So, yeah.
This is probably like the biggest question that you face and that a lot of people ask you, but how are the recommendations quality assured? Is there a risk that a farmer gets an incorrect recommendation? What measures are taken to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, we're doing a lot to prevent that. That's a lot on the technical side. So there's different ways we're doing it. So there's first of all system level prompting. So we are prompting the system at a high level to be very careful, to not kind of be overconfident and over certain in certain situations, to prioritize local solutions and kind of low cost solutions, right? So like the example that was provided earlier is like use garlic or use something else that's, readily available, for example. And we're doing constant evaluation with agricultural experts that are actually reviewing the response from the model. And they can rate it in terms of accuracy, in terms of specificity, whether it's skewed in terms of gender even, or if it's climate smart. And that process is called reinforcement learning human feedback. And that is very important to improve performance, to fine-tune the model, and that's a kind of a constant ongoing process of kind of review and fine-tuning the model, using that information from experts to continuously improve. And then finally, we also implement something called red teaming, adversarial testing. So you kind of ask the model some tricky questions maybe to see if it gives a skewed response, and then again feed that back into the model to say, you know, this is not a preferred way to respond. So it kind of learns from its own mistakes in a way.
Okay, we have some more partnership related questions here. One, do you need approval from government authorities in the countries where you deliver advisory? And second, which is a separate question, have you explored any partnerships with financial institutions, potentially related to farmers' credit profiles, the practices that they use, or the use of the tool?
Yeah, maybe starting with the second, on the financial partners, not so much yet. I think we have discussed the need, of course, for not just information. We know that farmers have like other barriers to adoption. So we have thought a lot about including additional information about local like service providers, for example, or even maybe, you know, some financial options. But I think that's down the line and it's more complicated to do it. And we, for now, just want to focus on getting the quality of the response right. As I mentioned, it's a lot of effort, and we need resources to improve just the quality of response before I think we go into like other potential, you know, use cases. And what was the first part? The other models
Do
that
you
we
need
consider?
approval from governments to give advisory in those countries?
I mean, we prefer to, like I said, we prefer to work with extension systems, not bypassing them, because it just makes sense for validation, like I said, for building trust. Even though we are doing a lot more digital advertising now about Farmer Chat, we still rely on in-person onboarding. In many cases, that would be done through like an extension system that's you know, existing public extension system. But technically, anyone who has access and is free already can start using Farmer Chat. So it is already happening. It's just not intentional for us to kind of bypass the traditional system. Yeah.
Okay, then I have two questions about sort of alternative apps. One, is there competition among farmer extension apps? What other digital tools are out there? I'm sure it varies by context, but you could focus on Kenya since that's where we're focusing. And then there's also a question on how you would compare Farmer Chat with Virtual Agronomist. I don't know if you feel equipped to answer that question, you don't have to, but anyone else in the chat can respond to that question as well.
I actually haven't used Virtual Agronomist. As far as I know, it's focusing on slightly more specific kind of use cases. The nice thing about Farmer Chat is that it's like very open to kind of ask anything you want that's related to agriculture or livestock. We are even, you know, having debates internally whether we want to extend content to like nutrition and other things that farmers are asking about. Particularly, you know, there may be difference between men and women farmers. So I think we have much broader kind of potential benefit and value for the farmer. Yeah, but I don't think I can comment specifically on like Virtual Agronomist. Yes, yes, there is competition, but it varies country by country, I would say. I think, like, for example, in India, there is more alternatives. farmers do access YouTube and they watch videos on YouTube about practices, right? Some of them are digital green videos, for example, or they do consult some more digitally savvy ones. They do consult Google, for example, right? We do hear it, or even ChatGPT. Some do. But I think really, again, the value that we're bringing is this localization, and we are investing a lot in this local language and making sure that there's accuracy, but also simplicity and customization, right? There's a lot happening in the background there.
Awesome. Okay, this is more of a technical question, but what is the AI interface being used on the back end for Farmer Chat? Is it proprietary or open source?
So we're partnering with OpenAI, but as far as I know, this is a bit more technical. As far as I know, we're currently building our own small language model. Small language models just means it's a bit more efficient, but that's how it's currently set up. Yeah, it's an Mini 4.0, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, and then you've sort of touched on this already with the language and the localization, but there's a question around how do you recommend farmer-facing AI tools avoid creating dependency on Western created or trained or controlled LLM models?
That's a good question. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to kind of avoid, right? And do. So, I mean, I think recent example is we learned that the language, local language that we were using just from Google Translation was not working in Ethiopia. So one of the local languages was just performing really poorly. And so we found like a local AI startup called Adis AI. And we learned that they're doing some really nice innovative things locally because they understand the context. So they're scraping a lot of YouTube videos that are in local language to train their model. And so we're partnering with them, for example, and that drastically improved our quality of language in that area in Ethiopia. So that's one example. So kind of, not doing everything in-house, but looking for local expertise that's just growing exponentially as well.
Awesome. I want to just acknowledge that this is the most active Q&A I've ever moderated, and you're doing amazing. We still have 30 more questions that are unanswered, and that's not even including everything that's happening in the chat right now. So thank you to everyone who's trying to answer the questions in the chat. But we're not, just a heads up, we're not going to get to everything. I'm going to give you a few more, and then we'll talk about how people can follow up for more information.
That's really great. Can I just mention something else that I think I forgot?
Yeah.
Because there's just also so much to tell you that I feel like it's like 1 hour is not enough. So in terms of, hard to reach farmers and women farmers, we are improving design. Currently is going to be an updated design that's much simpler. And we are really working on improving voice recognition technology. So that's something we use that for a lot of farmers, typing is not like a preferred way to actually communicate with Farmer Chat. They really like voice feature and photo. And so we're investing a lot in improving that because obviously that's very difficult when you're, trying to capture the language and like automated speech recognition models. We're evaluating them to improve, and our, photo feature does need improvement. So that's another way that we're trying to reach, farmers that may be more marginalized or don't want to type their question.
It sounds like there's a lot that you're still working on. It's continually improving. There's a lot still going. There is a question on how long ago did you start developing the tool? And if you're willing to share, how much investment has gone into developing the tool?
Like how much time?
Well, yeah. How many years ago did you start? And
Yeah,
then
I was actually
if you're willing to
myself
share how much it
forgetting.
cost.
Yeah. Oh gosh, how much cost? I think that's a finance question. I don't know, a lot. But we started just a few years ago. So in summer of 2024, we started piloting Telegram-based bots. So we started in Telegram actually because it was easier as a kind of MVP. It was very different, like, of course, setup because at that time we limited the knowledge base to documents that we could source from governments because we realized that they need to be trustworthy and vetted. But we initially ran into a problem of farmers asking about value chains that were not in this document. So what's called RAG, retrieval augmented generation, was just not working for us. And then we slowly moved into the app, and we launched the app last August, not 2025, sorry, we're already in 2026, but like the year before.
That's really impressive. That's really fast. I mean, I know that AI is moving incredibly quickly, and I opened this whole conversation by saying that, but you have 1 million farmers. That's like one of the fastest scaling solutions I've ever seen. So, huge congratulations. There's so much interest in this solution, and in learning more. Where should people go? Can they connect with you? Where can they find more information? Where should we direct them to get all of these unanswered questions answered?
Well, I would encourage everyone to just download FarmerChat and like try it out first. I don't know if you have that like slide with the QR code, but even if not, you can just download it from it's only for Android phone now, though I should say. So from Play Store, you can just download it. Also, just encourage to go to our website. Maybe I can share the link.
We'll put it in the follow-up email. We'll put the QR code,
Yeah, let's do that.
the report that we've done, your website.
Let's do that.
And I mean, we have a few people in the chat. Some are getting responded to, some are not, that are like interested in exploring partnerships. Can they reach out to you? Is there a point of contact we can share at Digital Green for them to reach out to? You just froze, Tatiana. I can't tell if you answered or are trying to respond.
I think I'm having some technical issues.
That's okay. We're in the last
end.
minute. You've done amazing. You've succeeded. It's okay to have technical issues in the final minute. We'll send instructions. We'll send instructions after. Thank you so much for joining and for giving us your time and for sharing all this information and being patient with all these questions. Thanks for partnering with us on the study and letting us do what I thought was like our coolest study of 2025 using this methodology, and the fact that you shared the back end data with us made it possible for us to do something that we've never done before. Thanks to GitLab for supporting the study. Thanks to Nadia on my team for facilitating this webinar and making it all happen in the background so seamlessly. And Hanadi, of course, for actually doing the research and sharing it with us, and Venu for the partnership with Digital Green and for jumping on to share your slides today. Thank you everyone so much for your time. This was really fun. I hope it was useful for everyone.
I also want to thank you. Oh. Thanks so much, 60 Decibels, for partnership and for being a thought partner and for organizing this. And like, we're happy to share. There's just more to share. I feel like just scratch the surface. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks so much.